Alright, y'all. Chapter 28 of the Boruto manga has finally been not released, but the spoilers have been released. Just put it like that. Inojin's brand new jutsu was actually unveiled. Not only that, Boruto's new sword was also unveiled as well. Some things were actually teased in the last chapter of the Boruto manga, but we finally get to see Bug pull up on the Hidden Leaf Village. This right here in itself is a little bit of a surprise to a lot of people in the actual chapter because everyone thought that he'd be infiltrating the Hidden Leaf Village a couple of days later, but it turns out that that wasn't the case at all. Now, the first thing we got to go through, the team reveal for this particular mission right here. Now, this right here, my personal opinion, it made a lot of sense. Shikamaru himself kind of went down and explained exactly why he actually chose these particular characters. First things first is going to be the people who actually will fight alongside Boruto and won't try to like kill him in this particular battle right here, at least for this particular battle. The full team is going to be Sarada, Ada, Damon, Chocho, Himawari, Shikadai, Konohamaru, Mitsuki, Delta, Kawaki, Amato, Boruto, and Sumire. This seems like an absolute bomb squad for what we actually do have. But let's be honest, I gotta give my guy Ikimoto a round of applause because he knew exactly what we want to see. He got straight to the BS. We got to see Boruto versus Bug for the first battle of this. Let's call it a mini arc because let's be honest, we're still in the quote unquote 10 Tails arc. We got Boruto versus Bug. Now, this right here is a battle that we've already gotten before. And before, it pretty much let us know Bug is no slouch. Bug will actually start boxing with some of these god level characters like Boruto, Kawaki, and even now I ain't gonna say he'd be able to do anything to Jura, but I don't think he'd be a slouch or a pushover. That's my point. Bug's first scenes in the village, he pulls up on two random Hidden Leaf Shinobi, but before Mamushi could even evacuate that premises after realizing that they had absolutely no idea where Ada was, Boruto pulls up. He pulls up and absolutely obliterates the first Mamushi. Now, one of the interesting things about this particular frame right here, first things first, he has his brand new sword. We're essentially seeing the first usage of that brand new sword, and of course, it looks absolutely broken. One of the things I do have to point out, Boruto is actually fighting Mamushi off guard in this particular panel right here. So I don't necessarily want to make it seem like Boruto is able to one-shot all of these Mamushis. For example, the second one he's going to fight is going to be a lot more difficult for him to actually defeat. But another interesting thing about this particular panel right here, we found out that to defeat these Mamushis, you actually have to destroy both of their eyes. And that's exactly what Boruto did right here. His first slash looked like it went directly through his eyes. Now, I talked about how the second Mamushi is going to be a little bit difficult. Boruto actually end up using his karma seal versus the second Mamushi that he actually had to fight. Now, this is something interesting. I do have to commend the Boruto leakers for this, quote unquote, but they didn't necessarily release all the pages of this particular chapter. So when I talk about this particular part right here, we didn't necessarily get to see Boruto against the second Mamushi. However, we got to see the last panel of the chapter, and in the last panel we see Boruto utilizing his karma seal, and he didn't necessarily talk about the fact that hey, he's using the karma seal for the first time. His first bit of dialogue was talking about how he can't necessarily get used to absorbing characters' jutsus because it feels itchy and weird. So this essentially gives us an idea of specifically what happened in the past couple of panels. It seems like Mamushi fired a blast at Boruto and Boruto just absorbed it. I'm guessing this could be a reason as to why he was essentially forced to utilize the karma seal. We understand during normal circumstances Boruto does not like to use the karma seal, but however, in a situation like this where it is going to be extremely useful in terms of absorbing chakra, I'm pretty sure it seems like he might have been forced to use it in this particular scenario. Now, this right here also gives me the idea, will we actually get to see Boruto utilize the karma seal, or will he essentially deactivate it and only have it pop out when he needs to, like, let's say absorb chakra or needs to do something else, maybe a small burst of energy or something like that, or a small little burst of speed that he didn't necessarily have in his base form. Me personally, however, I want to see Boruto go all out with the karma seal and just absolutely obliterate this version of Bug. One of the things that we do understand is that it wasn't necessarily an easy thing for Boruto on the last meeting with Bug to essentially destroy him. I know I keep on going back and forth of calling him Bug and Mamushi. Just understand, Bug is Mamushi and Mamushi is Bug regardless. But with the karma seal, I definitely believe that Boruto can actually defeat most of these Mamushi bodies very quickly, and I think that in itself is going to be very important in this particular arc because it's going to be multiple different Mamushis, and I think this is going to be something important when it comes to Damon as well as to why he wasn't able to save Ada. Speaking of that, we've seen a flash forward scene of a future it seems like that we're trying to avoid. Ada and Himawari are dead. In these particular panels, we see Ada being turned into a tree and Inojin essentially holding Himawari. This right here is having a lot of people on Twitter calling Damon an absolute fraud. I'm not necessarily going to be a part of that group. I don't necessarily think Damon's a fraud. However, I do believe that Mamushi's abilities almost like are perfect for a character like Damon. First things first, speed and strength wise, Mamushi is actually like that. We've seen that again. I keep on referencing back to the first battle with Boruto and Mamushi, but Boruto has essentially been speed blitzing everyone, and Mamushi was actually one of the few characters who were able to actually keep up with Boruto. Now that right there informs us as to how a Damon battle would go. In our personal opinion, it's not necessarily a guarantee that Mamushi would essentially beat Damon. However, and to be honest, he doesn't even need to beat Damon. If hypothetically there are 3 Mamushis dedicated to Damon, I think that is enough to essentially distract Damon for a 4th Mamushi to potentially try to do something to Ada. Again, you wouldn't necessarily have to defeat Damon with Mamushi's abilities. You would just have to preoccupy him to where Ada is defenseless. Another thing that's going to be very important is the fact that Mamushi can actually hide his chakra signature. This right here makes him extremely slippery in battle, and to be honest, I think this right here is one of the reasons why Boruto was actually caught off guard by one of the Mamushi clones, the second one that he did actually end up battling. Now this right here essentially makes Inojin's ability extremely paramount, extremely important. We heard about this in the last chapter where Kashin Koji said one of the keys to actually defeating Mamushi is going to be Inojin's abilities, and we see it already paying dividends in this particular chapter right here. Now to actually explain what it is, it's basically an updated mind transmission jutsu. It's essentially what the Yamanaka clan uses to essentially communicate with each other without actually speaking. It's essentially what Inojin is doing in this particular chapter right here. Shikamaru is communicating with all the characters that are actually involved in this mission that I named earlier. However, it's a little bit different. All of the people who are actually in communication, they're acting as satellites to actually pick up all the vibrations around them. This right here is going to be what allows them to locate Mamushi. The jutsu allows a visual representation of all the vibrations that Inojin and Shikamaru are going to be able to see, which is basically what's going on right here. Once Mamushi actually invaded the Hidden Leaf Village, you can see 8 dots on the vibration things right here, and that's essentially what they call out. Shikamaru specifically say it's 8 Mamushis that are spread out about 30 meters between each other, and again, on multiple panels, you see the 8 dots that they're essentially looking at. Another thing that was interesting in this chapter as well, Boruto's new sword. First things first, it seems like it's going to automatically emit chakra. Now it's not necessarily going to be its own chakra, it's going to be chakra from Boruto. One of the things that Boruto said as to why his blade was actually chipped was that during the Uchiha style, he has to actually intentionally funnel his chakra throughout the blade, so it's actually stronger than it normally is. However, the reason why it did actually chip is because he didn't funnel chakra to the blade in one specific moment, and of course that's the moment where it chipped. In this particular situation, he doesn't necessarily have to devote any actual intention to funneling the chakra to it, or any mind power in funneling the chakra to it, so he can actually concentrate fully on the actual battle. However, it only works when Boruto himself is actually touching the sword, or a character whose chakra is registered to the sword. The only people's chakra who are registered to the sword is going to be Boruto, Sumire, and Sasuke. Now here's the interesting part. This can work with other characters as well. However, it significantly drains their chakra. It's going to be exactly like the sword we seen back in the Ao arc when we fought against Ao, and Ao himself kind of grabbed the sword and he got a bunch of his chakra drained. Now I think anytime that we're actually going to get to see this, I think we are likely going to get to see this, where someone else tries to grab Boruto's sword, it's likely going to be a throwback to that exact scene. However, one of the interesting things that wasn't actually explained in this particular chapter right here was when Sumire said that the blade was actually made with another special material fused into it. Now, originally she said it was going to be made out of all the actual original material that the sword came with. However, this quote-unquote special material fused into it wasn't really explained. I'm checking on Twitter, and a lot of people are actually thinking it could be the new way, and I think that right there would be interesting. However, I don't necessarily want to just say that off rip, because let's be honest, Sumire at this particular point has a lot more nicks and knacks that she could potentially put into the blade. She's been training alongside Amada for over 3 years at this particular point, so it could literally be anything. Now during this chapter, Sumire did mention something about a supposed Hagoromo effect, or the effect of Hagoromo. Now, I don't necessarily know specifically what she was talking about. From the context of the chapter, it does make it seem like that is essentially what is actually funneling the chakra through the blade, the quote-unquote effect of Hagoromo, but it could be the quote-unquote special other thing that she added to the blade. However, I do want to know what you guys think about these spoilers in the comment section down below. I'm honestly super excited for chapter 28, and of course, shout out to the Boruto leakers for actually not necessarily giving us the whole entire chapter and making us look forward to the official release, which I actually am. But let me know what you guys think. It's me, your boy Baara B, and we out.
It's a knife.